know, in the FCSUA community, and Claudia has been such a champion of coordinating all of the data that we have to collect being put into Salesforce, and we've certainly tried to make it as easy as possible so that it's easy on you or the person that you have that's entering that information into the system. And it's gathering the information that we've been asked to collect on students. So we're going to start with student information and then do follow-up. And I've checked with both of the programs that we've just pulled a student. I just looked and started actually just alphabetically down and found 2 students that were in 2 different types of careers, a male and a female. And so we're going to have a student this morning. One of these is a Santa Fe student, one of them is a Tallahassee Community College student. And these both have the forms are completely completed with all of the information on those students. So, a lot of the information at the very beginning is just the basic information for the student. There's a lot of information as we continue and you continue with students. Many of you you're scrolling because there's lots of students in there. There are lots of students. So just whoever's doing that, making sure that you're finding the correct year for the information, and starting here with student information. And this is something that really none of the programs have any problems with. So Claudia can scroll on down. As you notice on the right, for those of you who are new,
it's charging in the boardroom.
You have are these toggle switches, Claudia, or what is the correct?
You can call them drop downs.
Drop downs. Okay, drop downs. Thank you. These drop downs where there are choices. So some of them are drop downs, some of them are fill in the blank. And so that's something to always be looking at. Also, when it's got a calendar, there's a calendar there where you can choose.
Can I open it? Because it's in, I'm going to open to edit. So I can...
Please. Claudia's going to open it in edit. And as you know, when you're looking at it and you've chosen the eyeball, you're just able to look at it, and that's probably what I did this morning, rather than choose the pencil. And if you choose the pencil, that means that you can write in it. That means that you can start putting information and that you can change things in there. So she's going to change that to, and Claudia, did you show them that? Up top there, you see the pencil, so this is
So this is what Drew is referring to, is to the action.
the action, thank you,
Right.
the action.
And just so everyone knows, and you're going to see this a little bit more when we go over the grant. So we're bringing in filters to all this list views because, especially to the students, we know that's getting too long as we are accumulating data year to year. So what's going to happen is that we're going to have a filter, so you can filter by year to your students, so you can find your students easier. But the actions, what is critical here is, it depends on what you want to do with the record. So if you want to only see the information that you enter, you can either click on the name of the student or click in the eye. But if you want to enter data or edit anything, so for sure you have to click on the pencil.
You know, while Claudia is finding the name so that it can actually be active, one of the things we really want to emphasize is when you're doing the student information and follow-up, key is that when the students enter your program, you know what you're going to ask them each and every year. And you know that you're going to follow up with them for 5 years. So you don't want to scramble around when you're putting the information in this year and go, oh my God, we didn't do that. So some of our programs actually have a very thorough entry application interview process where when they come in, they know the questions that they're going to ask. And so again, for some of you that are new, it will be good to look through this as we're going through so you can see everything that's being asked. And if you are new, you probably have less errors than some of the times with those of us who do a copy. Because sometimes when we do a copy, we don't go back and look at all of the information into something we want to emphasize, because you have the opportunity to copy each and every one of these once you've entered them and update them each year. But if you don't get the information at the front, then you won't do as thorough a job as you want to with the parent information, and when we get into the follow-ups, you won't have it as richly as you would like. We have a student up at this time? One of the areas that we noticed, maybe with your first entry, and particularly if you're at the end, trying to get it in by the deadline, it's the birth date. You might put the year, actually, that you're doing this report. So want to pay attention to that. That's the only thing in the gender information or the student identification that we notice is sometimes the birth date is the wrong date. You may have the right day and month, but it'll be 2023. So check that out, particularly if you're going to do this for the first time. We do want to say, before you can even get to this, and we'll re-emphasize it probably at the end, that your program information has to be approved. So we are not looking at the program information, but it has to be approved before you can even begin entering your student information. And so, like the mid-year, and anytime maybe I've talked with you as a group, it is, as soon as you can start your program information, start it. We can approve it. If you know, I know there's been some changes in your programs, but if you know pretty much your program information, start entering that now. If we can get through that, particularly those of you who have like 40 or more students, we can get through your students quicker. Because you won't get access until we get the program information on. So you can actually go into your program information, start on this year's report. The sooner you get that to us and we approve it, the sooner your students will be available. So we just want to make sure before we even get here that we have to do that before you can access the students.
Okay, and so this, would you just scroll back up at the top, Claudia, where it says section 1? So just remember, there are 3 different sections to this. And so that's something that sometimes whenever I first started, that 3rd section, if the student is exiting, is something that whenever I was looking over the first few, because I've definitely, it's taken me a little time to get accustomed to looking back and making sure all this is correct, but that 3rd section is there for student exit information for if they're exiting that year. But section 1 is just that general student information. So it's general student information all the way through.
And you must,
okay.
you must
so,
answer each thing.
Here, Jen.
No, go ahead. They must answer each thing.
And each area must have a response in that. Then, scroll back up just a little bit, Claudia, up just a little bit there. So please indicate the micro-credentials, badges, certification, and concentration tracks in which the student is enrolled. All credentials and certifications he or she is anticipated to earn by the time of FPCTP completion. And then you see here, those are for this student. Those are the options that are available at this FPCTP. So all of that is automatically pulled in and filled there. And so if you click on each of these, and this is something that's important to remember, if it's blue, there's something behind it. If it's blue, you can click on it. So let's go down one more, I think, to that next one, computer skills. Right there, introduction to computer skills. Right there, check, the student is enrolled. So find those things where the student is enrolled and click that. So you'll know where the student is enrolled and can check that. At any point that you have a question or a thought or a trick that you have learned, or a strategy, I should say, not a trick, but a strategy that you all have learned along the way doing this, please feel free to share, because many of you have been at this for putting in information for some time now. So those are all the choices that the student has here. Then, looking at different certifications. And so if we click on the different certifications, let's just see here, student is enrolled in this. So those where the student is enrolled, click those. The others do not have to have anything checked. Just the programs and certifications that this student is working on are checked. When it's blue, there's something behind it.
like Drew mentioned, all of those will automatically filled, they're automatically filled from the program information that you did for the update. Because you change your programs based on your initial application or your renewal application. So these have to be added. That's what the three of us spent a lot of time on connecting with our programs over the last couple of years. Is this what was offered during this academic year? This academic year, you would have done your program update and these were automatically pulled and we'll look at the choices. So for those who are new, whenever you enter in that program side, that's how they get filled over here automatically. And it's what's happened that current year. It could change each year. It could change what your options are because you do improvements. Okay.
So Janice, we'll do a little question and answer here. That'll be some of the things, whenever they, and Claudia, when the information rolls forward from the previous year, do they have to go through and unclick anything if the student is enrolled in a new, if they were working towards a different credential, or if they edit, do they have to add this, everything that's pulled forward whenever they bring that student forward? Are all of those checks still there? See, y'all are lucky that I'm up here because remembering if exactly all of that information comes back or not, I'm not certain. So I'm gonna ask those questions that maybe some of you all won't ask. I'll ask them.
So what happened is that when you clone a student, which we heard is a very helpful functionality, what is new is it needs to be revised. What is cloned is gonna be there because some things will overlap from the previous year with any changes that you might have. But if you know that when you were filling up your program information, you remove credentials or you add new concentrations, that's telling you that when you start working on your students, then it's when you get to that section of that area of each sections of the student report, you have to revise that because it's new information. Maybe you're offering a new concentration and that student happens to be enrolled in that. So you have to make sure that you check that for enrollment for completion when we go through all of them.
Great. How many of you all were happy whenever that clone feature came on board? Yeah, there were a couple people that were really, really happy about that. We were glad to see that. All right. So then we have, as I said, the concentration and tracks are all there. Well, I thought we could kind of just, since we're doing this presentation together, it's Janice and Drew. It's the you know, it's the dynamic duo. It's the dynamic duo. I thought this would be good if I asked some questions as we go along. You know, 10 questions. So, how long is it expected to take? You're putting in how long do you expect that the student is going to take for them to complete the program. Indicate the unit for your program. Is it years? Is it semesters? Is it clock hours? So that's something, you know, for the folks in the technical colleges, you know, it may be clock hours that they're looking at, or it may be semesters, but whatever it is, choose the one that works best for you. Then you have when they're expected to complete. What type of K-12 school did the student most currently attend? And we certainly, you know, the legislation, we reach out to homeschool students. So it may be a student who has been homeschooled, or private school, public school. And if there's any details there, if it's an other, then there's these great boxes for descriptions. And those descriptions are very powerful whenever we're looking and and you put that other, for us to really know more about that student if they don't fall into one of those categories. When did they exit K-12? What did they earn whenever they exited? And this is another drop down that you have there. And so it could be special diploma or other, none. You know, the legislation does not require that students have graduated with a diploma because there are some students that might be older that exited without a standard diploma, special diploma, or a certificate of, so are they meeting your entrance requirements? So, which of the following career clusters, you know, we're looking at the different, in the reporting, and if you looked at our annual report that we submit to the governor and to the legislature, you know, we look at all of those different career clusters, and we want to know sort of where things are falling. Which pathway are students choosing?
On the, excuse me, on the next one, on 18, we get some confusing responses on that. So this is, we're wanting to know before they got in your program, were they in competitive employment? And again, when you clone it, sometimes people miss that or the answers change. And then we go, well, was it or wasn't it? So prior to them coming into your program, did they? So think about that one, or look closely at that one, because that's one we notice that changes when you clone. But we want to know were they working before you even got in the program.
And I'm sure that you see there what we're really looking at and what our annual report is hoping that we show, and we're looking at data. So we're hoping that the data shows us that we're having improved outcomes for students. That students who were not working in competitive employment are now working in competitive employment. That students that were working for a lower rate of pay are hopefully working in a position that is aligned with their career goals, and that they have better pay. Even that some students may have benefits. So we want to be able to look at that from when students entered to when students are exiting.
When we start responding yes and no, look at 21, Claudia. And if you were to click no on 21, I want you to notice what happened. Click yes again so you can see what happened with the drop downs. So yes gives you another option to do some more specific information. B. If you click no, that's not there. And so again, if there was an error when you entered the first time, you entered a yes, and you had some information, then a new person came on board. And they see, they put, no, I don't know what the answer was. If they put no, we still have that yes data. And so oftentimes, and this will be throughout the form, oftentimes we'll come back to you and say, okay, last year you said yes, you had 10 hours, which is it? Was it yes, is it no this year? This one shouldn't have changed because it's prior to them entering, but we go back and we make you go back and look at the data and clean it up. Because no matter what you see on the front, if there was any time you click yes, then the data will remain there.
Just to say that is a common mistake when you're cloning, because it's copying exactly what you had from the previous year. So the only thing with that is we have to be careful with that. It has its pros and cons. So you're copying exactly everything, but maybe in this case, this answer is no, it's not, but it was yes, now it's no. You have to clean that up. So when we're looking at your data, we're looking at it from a different perspective than this. So you're saying no, but then the student has 10 hours and he has additional information. So that is something to remember, especially when you're using decline function.
When we're going through cleaning up the data, that's when we find it. So we've learned that even with this, we hope that it's going to stay the same, but we go click yes, no. We look to see, was there something there anyway? So we get a lot of fun going back and forth. Copper tone, did I say that? Oh, never mind. Going back and forth with yes, no, to see, did they forget that? So we can clean it up.
Bottom, any clarification for section 1, there are those sections. You know, whether it's the application, whether it's the grant, or whether it's the student report, there are those comment sections. So, you know, leave us a message there if there's something unique about that student that you want to share about the information that you've placed in there as we're moving forward. So that is section 1. Questions about section 1?
Drew. Claudia.
Will. So everybody can hear you.
Claudia, could you go up a little bit, just to those open? So if there's no comment in 22, we can leave it blank. And what's the distinction between 22 and then this section 1 comment right below?
Oh, good question.
2 different boxes.
Yeah.
I was just trying to think of something. No, I'm not, right. Right. Or, well, really, that's a good point. Thank you. Thank you for looking through that. Yeah.
So that's,
What you're seeing there actually is Drew's view. So so every one of us have more access to this. So that is the section, that is the box where we write comments and questions that you see in blue when we send it as updates needed. That's why you're seeing that now, Diana. But you don't see this when you log in into the community, only if they enter comments in there. So it comes and goes, so that's why. For you, you're only seeing question 22, and you're gonna see them again in the other sections, but this is just, if there is information. So that's what that comment, section 1 comment.
That makes sense.
Yeah, once we put a comment in there, you've seen it in blue, then we look for that, we go back to see if the change is made, or if it's something that we need to do, and then we clean it up, so it can get out.
And then we move on to section 2. Again, we're looking at what was the student's enrollment status this reporting year. So we're looking if students are continuing or if they are new students. What was the student's status at the completion of this reporting year? So are they exiting or are they, oh, I've got to move out a little bit, okay. Are they going to exit the program or are they continuing? So all of those are pretty, continuing, new, or continuing, or exiting, okay?
you're probably gonna say the same thing that I'm.
2 comments. One, we
Step into the box. You got to step into the box.
That B is important as well as A. And we know that some of you have really learned a lot about your students, and although they have finished their curriculum, you have offered them the opportunity to continue past that. And you want them to stay supported on the FPCTP scholarship. The only way they stay supported on the scholarship is you put continuing. And if you have other curricular opportunities for them, which is great, which we know 3 or 4 of our programs do, then you will not say they exited. You will say they continue, because if you exit them, they will not come up for the next year. They will not be available for scholarships. So if they are continuing, even though this will be a great point to put comments down, or description down, but when you click exit, go ahead, click exit. That's when Drew was mentioning at the beginning, look what happens down to, you get a new section. So anytime you click exit, even though that arrow may not always show you, you need to click all the way down to see that exit information. Go ahead and do it again and go scroll down for you. It's going to be there. A lot of people miss that because it's not already dropped down. So pay attention to that. And again, for those unique situations where you're allowing, even though they finished the curriculum, then they came in, and you're allowing them some additional opportunities, make sure you click continuing so they can get a scholarship. Ninja, let me come over to you.
So this is an item that's confused me. Sorry, yes. So this item has confused me in the past, and I'm sure you explained it to me, but I'm going to ask again. So the item that says which of the following best describes the student status regarding SAP, and then I click for the student meet SAP progressing as planned, student remains eligible. However, in fact, the student exited the program. So yes, she made progress over the year, but no longer, as you pointed out, remains eligible for the scholarship, but I didn't see another choice that said she made progress, but she's exited. Do you understand?
Yeah. Hope I understand. When you said, the first question is, in those cases, did you want that student to continue the next year?
No, she's done.
Okay.
But I didn't have a choice for that.
Yeah.
That is actually an excellent suggestion. So it might be something that we add, because it can be a consecutive, like a logic that we add behind that. If you're saying exiting, then none of these options actually apply to you anymore. So it maybe makes sense not applicable, or maybe not showing you the question. So that's actually a very good suggestion. Thank you.
You know, every time, that's why we like for you to tell us, because as we do it, we always have our programs that we thank them for their input, because they'll find some things that we don't often pay attention to as we're designing it. So that's one that actually has never come up, so I really appreciate that. And when you go down, the only opportunity would have been down in the description, which I know you're really good at doing. If when we got down to the end of the section, you may have made a comment about what's the status of that student. So when we're looking at the semesters, you want to click all of them. And sometimes that one is missed too. But and also at the beginning when we were doing them, depending on which institution, we had to do some technical corrections. So we didn't know that you weren't able to choose all options, and we fixed that. Okay? Again, this information pulls. So we ask you, what were the students' interests when they entered? What was the students' interest during? And then what were the students' interests and tracks after? So we'll ask those questions over and over again, and we'll go to the sections to see, did you mark anything? And it's been interesting, because sometimes at the top, you'll say that they were interested in one area, but you'll come in this section and you won't tell us the status of whether they earned it, whether they are continuing. And so we have to go back and ask you to look at, like you mentioned, if they're blue, you need to click on it and see. So does anyone have a strategy that you use when you remember, other than your Excel file or the records you have on students, where you remember all of the concentrations when they have a lot of options? I can say, Linda, you have a lot of great options, those micro-credentials for your students. How do you keep track of that? How do you keep track knowing where everybody is? Because you have some that are definitely requirements, particularly for your young ladies, but how do you keep track of them?
So I have a table with all the students in it, and I constantly add to it and update so that I know what classes they're in, what certificates they're earning, and that's how I track it.
Anybody else have a different strategy? When you have a lot of options, Christian, you have a lot of options. Is it different from Linda with the table? Because when we look at whatever's at top, middle, and finish, do you do anything differently than a table?
Well, I have a spreadsheet. I'm guessing tomato. Yeah, so we use a spreadsheet, and it's an organic document, so it continues to change. So that's pretty much what we use. And that helps also with all the reporting, because we track the date they started their program, industry certifications, whether or not they're considered a completer. So a lot of the data that's important to CO, we track there, but also data that's important to FCSUA.
Okay, thank you. Knowing that status is critical, and that's one that doesn't get checked in each section sometimes, so we want to make sure you pay attention to those. Okay?
And again, anywhere you see blue in those sections, it may be the same list that you've seen previously in another section, but the responses may be different. Did they earn, what have they earned? So saying that not that they're enrolled, but if they have earned. And then down here, lower in section 2 on number 6, please use the table below to describe this student's enrollment. So you're looking here at, is it regular enrollment in credit bearing? And we have a couple of programs where students are in a course that is credit bearing, or is it an audit for no credit, a unique FPCTP course, a non-credit bearing, non-degree course, internship course, work experience course, or other. And you see here that there can be a mixture. There can be a mixture of what the student is enrolled in. And so there's, start out with the first column of yes, no, and then the student, which reporting year. Okay, did you have a copy?
This is the one we have to get back with you a lot on, because you have so many options that students are in all of these courses, in many of your programs. I mean, they're in all of these options, which is great. What we get the biggest question is the differentiation between the unique FPCTP courses and the regular credit-bearing courses, or the courses, you know. So when you look at that, when you go down to work experience, internship, a lot of times you miss those. If they have it, those are the opportunities they had that year, then you want to make sure you hit that. But that unique FPCTP course oftentimes kind of get people. And for programs like McPatter, College of Florida Keys, Santa Fe, you may start off in your first term where you have them maybe just in unique courses. That may be what happens in the first term. So you don't want to omit that, and you have to think about the whole year. Then what happened? Well, maybe everything else was auditing, or maybe it was they had 3 credit-bearing courses. So you want to look, and we want and we like to see, because we expect that everybody has had some work experience related opportunity. So oftentimes those are missed, and as you think about that, and if it's a mixture, clock hours, credit hours, that's okay. We're just trying to document it because I know you've seen that in the report, and I know you know everything in it, and you looked for your institution and you saw all of the data that's accurate because you gave it to us. But that's what we're trying to do, is capture it in an accurate way across the diversity of the courses. This year, I think we had over 200 students enrolled in inclusive classes in some format other than the unique FPCTP courses. That's where we got that data from you.
Something that also happens commonly when you're cloning, and it's actually a good example here. And it happens to everybody, Linda, so it's fine. You're saying no here in audit no credit, and you have data, and you have data. This happens because you copy it. And like the other questions, you have to revise it. It's not only changing to no, it's also looking at these 3 fields that come after. What is a good thing about this table is that when you say no, for example, the first, it tells you you cannot enter anything here or here or here. So it's blocked out, so you don't have additional information that you need. That's the good thing. The down part of that is when you clone it and you're gonna say no, before that, make sure that this is not tied to the student anymore, because if you don't have that kind of class, of course, there's no need to have block hours or any numbers in here. So it's good things about the cloning function, but when you use it, you have to go through every question and revise. So this is something else to keep in mind as well.
Notice those yes, no questions. You always have to go back to those because we do.
So with that, has anyone found a good strategy for that? Whenever you're looking at students that are cloned and going back at all the data as you're going through and making sure that you're taking out data that was last year's data and that you're putting in data from this year with some of the things? Have any of you developed a strategy for that? Or you just go through step by step? And that's okay, just asking. I mean, I know you all are some smart folks and you're doing a great job. And especially whenever you're the one that's entering it, I'm sure that you're thinking of ways to make that work even better.
That's the key. If you're the one entering it, but sometimes you're not the one entering it, and if you give it to someone else and they don't know what was the previous history, or they don't see that previous data, then they don't get it. So how you holding on to that so that whomever enters it the way, make the right information available this particular year.
So, going through the grant process and, getting 15 to 16 emails from Janice and Drew every day, One of the strategies that I came up with is I used one of the members on my team, we have the institutional profile. I don't know about some of you, but I go cross-eyed after a while staring at the screen. So I would have them log in and have them look at the cloned information just to make sure there weren't things that I missed. So that way, I cut that email from Janice and Drew down to about 8 a day. So, improvement.
Thank you, Christian.
I guess this is old school, but it works for us. Each time we enter the information, it's different, but I have a good old-fashioned Word document and labeled with each of the students' names. So my information, my foundation information is there, so when I'm checking the cloning, I always go back to that Word document.
Gracias. Okay.
Okay, so we're looking at the total number of courses here, and which of the following career clusters best represents the student's employment. So again, you're looking at the different choices there in the different career clusters. Here, 2 are chosen. More than one can be chosen.
We go back, I'm sorry, up to number 7. Number 7 corresponds to the table above. So we literally count that column. And so we ask that you count that column too, because we'll go back and we'll see that number 7 isn't the same as the number of courses that you chose up there. Thanks.
Okay, Claudia, you can scroll down some there. All right, so we're looking now at competitive integrated employment. And was the student, they were not, was the student receiving what type of supports? Because we're wanting to know for students in integrated employment, what type of supports are they receiving? So there are several questions there that are very similar. So there, you go on through number 12. So was the unpaid, if we're looking at unpaid, was the unpaid experience? And I'm glad that Jacqueline and Stephanie aren't here right now. Looking at that, because there may, and as they said, there are sometimes whenever students are in some type of unpaid experience, but we want to be working towards students having paid employment experiences. So the hours are there. Are there questions on some of these that folks have? Okay, so let's look at number 13 here. And so let's show here's provide any needed clarification related to section 2. And so you see here, and I did check with Linda ahead of time to ask her if I could use one of her student examples. And so Linda gave us some clarification there on this student so that we would understand more about that students, because explaining work experience by just saying yes, no, hour here, hour there, there's always more details to that. And so providing that information really gives us a clear picture. Okay?
That helps with
Scroll just a hair, just a little bit, and you see, because I wasn't thinking of that earlier, Diana, that we're looking at my view, not the view that you see. But this is a comment that we made back, and we should have gone through and taken this comment out because this was corrected, but we will write back the comment to you, and for those of you who are new, you'll enter this, you'll submit it, we'll review it. If we have questions, we go into what we see, which is a comment section, and either Janice or I, one wrote, number 10, is the answer yes or no? If no, please review data listed under yes, because it had been yes probably the previous year, there was some data there. Go back and click, and it's just to make sure that the data is accurate, and we all know how important that is. So that's where those comments come in, and you see that. So whatever you're doing in the FCSUA community, at the end of any section, there's a comment section so that we can communicate back and forth with you, and it's right there. It's not in a separate email. It's right there in the community so that you can see that. The next is the student exit information. And so, what was the student's, what date was the student, what was the last date the student was enrolled in the FBCTP? So we're wanting to know the exit date here. Did they complete the program? They completed the program requirements. Did the student earn one or more credentials while enrolled in and upon completion of the FBCTP? We know that that's certainly one of our, that's a goal for students to leave with a meaningful credential or more than one meaningful credential. And so please indicate the concentrations or tracks. And here again, you've got those blue, those are your options for your program. They're in blue. So here's one, and it's checked. This is something the student earned. Okay? Certifications that the student earned. And so any certifications that they earned, this one, the student earned this certification. So that's checked as earned. These are some of the tracks. What are the plans for the 12 months following exit from the FBCTP and its competitive integrated employment? And for this student, it's part-time. There are also these other options for you to click there to choose, whether it might be with ongoing supported employment services, maybe enter, and we do have a student that's going to enter a degree program in, I think, 2 of our different programs. We have students that are going to continue their education by enrolling in a degree-seeking program. So different choices there, and also other, and under other, there's a box for please describe. It disappears. If you don't click that, it's not there. So, what are the students' plans beyond 1 year after the FBCTP exit? To continue to work and live as independently as possible, to maintain her position at Tropical Smoothies as a food prepper.
If we look at the choices, some of you are already familiar with this because you've received a student who may have exited someone else's program. And so we don't like that to be a habit. But we know, just like when we went from one college to another maybe, and because one college offered credentials that another one didn't, we do accept that, but we also want to limit that. Because we know that sometimes students, we can have students, typical students who can be career students, and our goal is employment. However, it is possible that they enter another CTP, and you know that, FBCTP, and you know that. And actually for those who have exited a previous FBCTP, that previous institution will let us know that that student is probably applying somewhere else, and we would hear from the receiving institution. But we would really want to pay attention to that, of the explanation of why they need to enter. Because remember, when they've exited, they are no longer for your FBCTP. But they can go to another one with the justification that whatever credentials this other one is offering meets their career goals. But if they come a third time, we probably will say they're not eligible because we need them to go to work. So keep that in mind when you might know of a student who are doing that, who's doing that.
I wanted to go back to this question, which is the status of the student. And a lot of, most of you have asked what happens when a student exits or for some reason leave the program. So what happens with the scholarship request that you have submitted, and what happens with the annual report? So our answer is, you wait until you get to the point where you're completing this form. In section 2, you said the student exited the program, which triggers section 3 to show up on your screen. So this is the moment when you think about, okay, what's the answer that's going to be in this question? In your case, the students did not complete the program. That actually, what happens when you select this option is, you're not going to see the student's name anymore when you're requesting scholarships the following year, because the student is no longer part of your program, so it's not eligible. The other good thing about all disconnections happening in the system is that when you said did not complete the program, you don't have to report that this is student anymore. The student exited. But remember, there is a follow-up report, and we will be talking about that later. If you said the student completed the program requirements, it means it's a graduate, so you have to follow up on the students. This is the option, this is the question that connects with the follow-up report. So this is what makes the connection between this form and the next one. So you see the name of the student when you're doing your 5-year follow-up report. So make sure that you're answering this correctly so you don't have to worry about that student when you're doing a scholarship request, when you're thinking about your follow-up reports for your annual information report. So it's all connected back and forth, and that's the reason why. So usually that the question comes from what happened when the student exits, what we do with the scholarship. So it starts all from there, but it goes all the way to the annual report. So this is the critical question in that case.
Okay, and we're almost to, that ends up all of the, and then you put, down at the bottom, just always remember to click save. So that, that's my options down there to save as updates needed. So if there are some updates that are gonna be needed, we click that and you receive it back, saying to you that there's some updates needed on this specific student. But of course, always remember to click save. So that's the student information. So any questions about the student information report? It's a lot of information, especially when you get a lot of students. I mean, like FAU has a large number of students, and so there's a lot of information to be entered there whenever you start getting a large number of students in your program. Okay, all right. We'll go ahead and move right on to looking at the follow-up. If you need to stand up and stretch while we're talking about this, it's not going to bother me at all. So you just stand up if you need to. But we're going to look at the student follow-up data. Folks, that when we're looking at, and we're talking with several folks about new programs, and someone said to me the other day, they said, we're not sure if we wanted to have a program, because if we know that there's a requirement to follow up, and if we can't find those students, we have to pay back tuition on those students. And I said, I'm not sure who would have told you that, but that's certainly inaccurate information. That's not accurate information. We have some programs that that are able to find every single student and follow up with every single student. And we certainly know that you're all professionals and working to do that. But there are going to be some students that we cannot track down. Because we're in Florida, a lot of people move to Florida and then move out of Florida. I know that in the Keys, there are a lot of people that move back and forth into the Keys and then out of the Keys. Even in rural North Florida, there's a lot of movement where people are moving in and then are only there for a period of time, and sometimes you just lose contact with people. But we want to look at the best way to do that. So I just wanted to know if there were some programs that might be able to share whenever we're starting to talk about follow-up data, because I know that I'd rather listen to you all than listen to myself, although I love listening to Janice and Claudia. I don't like listening to myself. But when we're looking at follow-up data, some of the things that maybe you do with follow-up. And I know that Vivian has done a really great job with being able to follow up with students. So what are some of the things that you do, Vivian?
What Ada and I do at Robert Morgan is from the beginning, we let the students know that this scholarship is something that brings responsibilities for them. So they had to have no choice but to stay in touch with us. They know this, and their parents, and they know that we're going to be asking them questions throughout the year, or taking pictures or videos, and whenever they say, what's this for again? This is for the center, this is for unique abilities, this is for the group that provides the scholarship ability for you to be enrolled, for you to have all these materials. Oh, okay, scholarship people, that's all they need to know. Some students know more, and some parents know and understand more, and always refer them to your website. And like Ada's saying, they sign a contract for us, they sign documentation when we disperse. So it's always, this is scholarship related. This is your responsibility. You're not employed in a traditional job. Your job right now is to earn your grades, to do, and we go through the Riot Act, and I'm sure everyone does. So when it gets to that time of doing reports, we let them know that we're going to reach out to them in any way. To get some me, it's usually email or text. I have a list of questions that I send, and I begin with, it's that time of year again, how are you doing? You may have told me, you may have sent me pictures, but I need to fill this out. And we encourage our students to always stay in touch with us and keep us updated about jobs, about moves, about personal stuff, so that it's not a surprise. We don't just hear from them once a year before the student report. I think that's been what we established from the beginning that's worked for us.
Any questions about that? And someone else, that when you're looking at follow-up data and what you do with the follow-up data. I know that some programs do not have students that they're following up with yet, but any other programs that are following up, and some of the strategies or the practices that you use when doing that. Anyone? Christian, thank you.
So we try to appeal to the individual needs of each student. Some students, you can reach them via email. We always ask for a personal email. But the other thing we do is we have a Google form, and then that Google form auto-populates to a sheet. So we send that out. Some of our students will complete that a lot faster than they will if you ask them, how much you're earning, this and that. And then it auto-populates to that spreadsheet, so I don't have to go through and look at the individual results. I can just pull that Excel file and then look at the data from there.
All right, Geraldine, thank you.
I only had to do it once, and it was difficult because I was new to the program and trying to reach out to students who did not know me, and I didn't know them as well, and reaching out to their parents because some of the questions the students had to ask their parents. So it got to be quite interesting, and I found that the students that were in the same cohort, they don't know each other. They all do Facebook. I don't. So as they said to me, oh yeah, so-and-so, she must be wearing, she just came from Hawaii. I'm like, how did you know that? So the Facebook has been something that I just not had to know.
That's a great point that you brought up there, that it's more than just one person, because whenever someone leaves and someone new comes in and you're trying to do follow-up with students that you're not familiar with, that you did not have experience with, that comes with its challenges. And so you're right, sometimes students know information about other students and where they are. Anyone else with any thought on that? Yes.
Big room.
It is.
We have a lot of students that we have to follow up with. We have a big program, so we start, as soon as students are in the program, we have a culture of we're texting them very regularly and we're calling them very regularly, so when they leave us, I think that it kind of continues with them, oh, Miss Heather is texting me, I haven't heard from her in a year, I'm gonna respond right away. So we start with, we're texting you all the time for communication purposes, so it kind of continues on, so it's easy to keep track.
Very good. Anyone else? Thank you all for those. Those are great suggestions. Where? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Thank you.
Well, we basically keep their phone numbers. We also are very communicative with them, and they with us. We keep in touch, and I started up this group, I want to say during COVID, where I had them like meet up and we just play games on there, and I was like hosting it. But I weaned them out of that. Now they have their own group, and we still keep in touch. And the other ones that are not part of the group, I just call.
Good. That's a great strategy.
I just have this random idea. Okay.
And this is just based on the feedback about transition of staff and the people that have created a culture of texting. If we have a culture of texting, but the text is coming from one person who is no longer there, it might kind of stump the students or not know. How about maybe all of you look at maybe getting some type of platform where you can do auto text and it's coming from a program, but not from a person. So it doesn't matter who is there. The text is coming from saints rather than lenders.
Great suggestion, Dee. Thank you. Very good suggestion.
Yeah, she's taking the photos on her phone just for us to be able to put up on social media. So what may happen is
Don't we have, I think, does St. Pete have a post-grad program, or Santa Fe? There's a couple of you who have a post, you have a position, yeah, Santa Fe has a, I thought FAU did too, I knew it's at least two, that has a position in their grant, but that's the responsibility to follow up, to make sure they get the data. What's the position called?
Well, there's not really a position per se, you know, but we have weekly, not weekly, we have monthly activities for alumni that we schedule and invite them to. And also we're checking in monthly just with how are you doing? You know, can we help? Are you still looking for a job? Or do you need any guidance? Can we support you?
Yeah, part of that grant, they put in that was going to be a component of what, I'm sorry, in the renewal application, that was a part of their component to make sure they keep his students maintain employment and they know what they're doing, and so that they can get that data. So they established that as part of what they would do on a regular basis. So that's good. What do we have next? Remember the reporting year. That's always critical to copy. Look at that reporting year, edit everything. I think we said that. And again, as you're hearing, what you ask and what you present to the students and families at the very beginning is critical. Because you are following up with the students every year. You have them every year to get their data. There's no reason why you wouldn't know what their results are at the end of the year. Employment-wise, career choices, concentrations. But that follow-along data is really critical and important. And we are still seeing most of the information is gathered from either a parent or a family member. And so how do you get that information from the individuals? And it's, you know, they're connected with their families, a lot of them, and that's fine, but you have a reliable source to kind of help. Parts of what we don't see, like if you were to just use Facebook for contact or some other social media, you don't get always the hourly wage, the compensation that the students get. So a lot of times you have to go through other means of finding out, do you get health insurance? Are you full-time? How much do you earn a week? You know, how much your position change? You have to hunt it down a little more. So you want to think about how else can we make sure, again, looking at this kind of information ahead of time, knowing what you have to ask every year is very helpful. And so you'll know and have your students ready and families ready, or guardians or whomever the connected individuals are, to help provide you that information along the way. I think the others are pretty, we talked to you to death about yes, no. That's going to happen on every document. And we are liking that we see more number 7. You're learning more about number 7, what kind of options they have, because a lot of times you just really didn't know, it wasn't a question you asked. Or when you're talking with the families, again, if you get them ready, if they're the ones that's providing you that information and some of them don't want to give you that personal information, letting them know how important it is, just to know. You're not reporting their student's name to anybody that's never connected to the public in any way about benefits they're on. But I know that sometimes they're hesitant about telling your wage and whatever their other compensations are. Again, you see in this example, some examples are getting some clarification when we don't really know. Again, that should have been deleted, but we went back and we got the information filled in to get us what we needed. And that's it. The follow-ups come after they complete 1 year. So not the year that they complete. So you're going to have students who complete this year. You won't do follow-up on them until the following year. So you want to know what you're going to have to get them to respond to.
Another thing important is like the program information form. There is no time for you to complete that. There is no time for you to complete this either. If you want to start now, you don't have to wait until July until you start getting the reminders from the FCSUA community. If you start gathering information now, you can still work in here, have it in draft, and when you know they're ready, then submit it to us. You don't have to wait a couple more months to start this. So if you want to start the upcoming ones now, it's open for every program to start working on them. So there's no time for this. Like, it's not for the, there's no time for the program information either.
So clarification for you. If they submit, because I know there's a couple with program information in draft, and your program information in draft, they can also put student information in draft without it being approved. I didn't think so. So that we want to be clear on that is,
Has to be approved.
make sure if you're starting to get the program information quick, it's easier. It's one thing. So get the program information done. And even our new baby, yes, you will do an annual report. So if you know, and this is for Emerald Coast, if you know you're going to hire somebody this year, or whatever you know at this time, you know what your program options are, you can begin putting that in and we can help you with that. I think you all are going to start admitting students next academic year, not this academic. So it's like several of our programs. When they started, all they had was program information. You don't have any student information. Next year you'll have both. So you can start, again, get it approved. It'll make all of us work a whole lot quicker if you do that. Even if you have 2 students, it's still good to get it out of the way.
Remind me on the program information, is that clonable? It is.
You just have to check for accuracy, because each year you enhance your programs. Sometimes you didn't offer a concentration. Or you changed your mind, it wasn't working. You decided that's not gonna work. So you wanna think about that.
And for those of you who are new or don't remember, the program information has to be completed first and approved, because it loads into this, just what we've gone through. Those blue areas all auto-load from that. So if you started in students, if that were to happen, and we've learned this, so that you can't, because we want to make sure that once you're doing it based on your accurate program, so that it's accurate information, and that nothing changes in there. So it is required that your program information annual report is approved before you can go into the student information.
If there's no other comments, what do we take it? Oh, great. But we'll make an adjustment, certainly with the schedule, because it's all about us. So we'll make adjustments to make sure you get the right break time, and then we'll get back in on the next session as soon as we can.
So I don't know if I really want to bring this up, but I'm going to. So I know, like in high school, that they follow up students, and you can get data followed up by disability and where they're working and if they're not working through Social Security number. Are there any, and I don't know if, well, Rehab does this, are there any agencies that you can get follow-up data tagged to your students? Is that a stupid question? I mean, there's no stupid question, but.
Well, it's done in K-12 through FETPIP,
Right.
which is the Florida Educational Training Program
Right.
Pupil Information Program. Pupil Information Program is FETPIP.
Right.
And they're able to do that. And they're just doing it at one moment in time after that student exits. That's my understanding.
But is there anything at the post-secondary level? I'm just curious.
I don't know. I know.
Or if agencies keep it? No.
Yeah.
The Florida Department of Employment, Economic Development, used to keep the data, but you pay, it's a fee, and it's a hefty fee that you pay, that you can look at the Social Security, you can buy the Social Security. But I can tell you the process is cumbersome, because we've tried it for a different program.
Okay, so not a good path. It just came to my head that there might be some data out there you could mine.
Christy, you had come.
Yeah, just to piggyback, it's like the work number for Career Source Broward, which is the workforce board for the state, and they have this work number that you can submit information to. But to your point, it's very expensive. Like Broward Schools doesn't hold that work number information. We have a partnership. We can't get Grow and Build information, but from another grant we can. But it's there and available, but it is expensive. And you have to go in there and then you pull out that data.
Yeah, just trying to think of other ways if you can't get it, resources, but yeah, don't wanna go broke trying to get it. If there's no other comments, then we'll end this session. It's 9:22, so will a 10-minute break be okay? Okay, and then we'll get started about 9:30. Cut 2 minutes. All right, see you back in at 9:30. Thank you.